What is up, fisher people? I'm coming back at you from the boat, though not on the water. So now that a full season's over, I thought I would do a second evaluation review of the boat. I did one video right after purchasing. I did another video picking up the boat. And now I want to do a video a year in after a full season of guiding, just to see how things went, what I thought was good about the boat, what I thought I could improve, and what I might do for next year. That last video picking up the boat had some interesting comments, which is okay. Free speech is a thing. But yeah, we'll see where this one goes. And before I start talking about the boat specifically, I should also mention that I'm working on putting up a gear page on my website. So I have a bunch of stuff on there already, and I'm gonna work on putting some more things on there because people have asked me occasionally some questions about what gear that I use and what things that I like. So if you want to go to that, it's bloemendaalfishing.com/gear. And I do have affiliate memberships with some of those products. So if you click on those links and buy some of that stuff, I might get a little cut, but it does not affect the price that you pay. Just a little bit of what would go to that company then goes to me and helps to support my channel. So if there's something on there that you think you would like to have, that you think might be good, I'd appreciate you buying it through there because it would help me out a little bit in the process. And yeah, so here we go. Oh yeah, you probably also noticed I do have a new hat as well, right there. If you want the What's Up Fisher People hats, as well as shirts, that's also on the website, bloemendaalfishing.com/merch. Some people like the YouTube version hat more, some people like the guide service hat. They're both out there now. If you want a hat, you got your pick of the litter. So when I first got this boat, the things that I really wanted different from my first boat to upgrade were more space, which obviously compared to an 1875 crossover, this is almost a foot wider and about 1.5 feet longer. And there's definitely more space for people, more storage, and it's just way more comfortable overall. Secondly, I wanted better boat control. I wanted something that would handle really well in bigger waves, allow me to get to spots when it's a little rougher that I may not have got to otherwise, and still stay fairly comfortable and fairly dry. And I really wanted to fish well in the wind and the waves, whether it means spot locking or trolling and staying on my path. And in that regard, it has actually probably exceeded expectations. The things that really help are the weight of the boat, the fiberglass nature of the boat, the big wide hull and the great hull design that it has, as well as the strakes on the bottom of the boat and all that kind of stuff. It really helps it track well. It really helps it hold its line well. And the other great thing is, not specific to this boat, but just simply the fact that I got the newer trolling motor technology and I got the puck, which helps determine the orientation of the boat, not just the position, but actually which direction it's pointing, helps immensely when it comes to seeing your position on the graph, knowing which way you're facing if you're trying to position yourself at a certain spot on like a sunken island or something, and just spot lock wise, because my old boat would kind of hold within a 30-foot circle and kind of drift and fishtail and spin back into place and then drift off. And this one holds so tightly on a 2 to 3 foot circle at worst. And it's absolutely incredible and has made life so much easier and so much better for my clients. So mission very much accomplished there. The other things that I wanted a bigger gas tank, so I didn't have to worry about making big runs. And I wanted the boat to go a little faster. This boat has a 70-gallon gas tank compared to my old 30. I have never had even close to any problems running out of gas. And in terms of speed, not only is it faster, but again, since it's heavier and cut waves better, if it is rougher out there, instead of just kind of, slowly bouncing into waves, I can get up on top of some, at least 2, 3, maybe 4 foot waves and get up and go a little bit and not feel like we're out of control, which saves a lot of time in the process. So then performance wise, in terms of like how fast the boat goes, if I plane it up all the way and really get up and go, I can get up to 56 miles an hour by myself. If I got a crew of people, I can at least get 52 or 53, which is more than enough with this 250 engine behind it. You can put a 300 on this thing and it'll probably be even better if that's something you can afford and something that you want, but the 250's done great for me. In terms of the hole shot, I would say if I have a full boat of people, the hole shot isn't great. It does take a little while to get up on plane, but that's more of a propping issue, honestly. And I might actually swap out the props potentially for next year. Basically what you get is you get a better hole shot, but you're trading your top end speed. So instead of going 56, I might only go 52 or something like that. It's something I'll consider. So if you were thinking about getting this boat, think about the prop. I think the motor's got plenty of guts to do it. It's more of a prop thing. The other thing that's kind of performance related, but it's more space related, is like in terms of the bow, like it would be nice, honestly, if I could get 2 seats up there, but the way the storage units are laid out, I can only get the 1 seat in the middle. So I do feel like sometimes I lose a little, there's a lot of bow space, but I can't utilize it fully if I have 4 other people in my boat. More of a guiding issue really than it is anything else. So if you're not a guide and you're thinking about taking 2, 3, 4 people out, I probably wouldn't even consider it a negative, honestly. But I feel like I haven't been able to utilize that space as best as possible. But the other thing that I opted to get on this boat, which doesn't come standard, is trim tabs. And they're basically little plain fins in the back that you can toggle. So when you're on plane, if you want to lift the bow, lower the bow, or tilt the boat sideways to help level it out, you can do that with those trim tabs. It does have a little bit of drag on the boat, so it does reduce your speed and your gas mileage just a shade, but it's not that big a deal and it's way worth it. They're amazing for whether your load is different depending on the people you got in the boat, or if you're just running like in the ditch, in the trough of waves trying to stay dry. For example, if the waves are coming from the left, you can tilt the boat down so that left side raises up a little bit and it rides flatter and keeps you drier on that side, which is just amazingly helpful, especially as a guide. And if you're running, for example, downwind with the waves, you can trim the bow down just a shade. If you're careful not to spear waves, you've got to be paying attention to that. But you can hug the waves a little better and ride a little flatter and go a little faster that way without crashing waves quite as much as you would without the trim tabs, which is super nice. Now, in terms of issues, I have had a few issues with the boat, but honestly, I think a lot of the issues are related, first of all, more to accessories rather than the boat specifically itself. And I think a lot of it had to do with COVID production. I know people were strapped for time, and I think some things happen in production with not only boats, but everything as they're trying to meet timelines and get stuff out the door. I think some things got missed, maybe in quality control or something like that. So for example, my side imaging transducer was bad out of the box. I had to get a new transducer right away. My Ulterra, I wound up having the trim belt that pulls the motor up and down the shaft. That thing wound up going out way earlier than expected. The guy that worked on it and fixed it for me said it was likely that it probably wasn't installed quite tight enough at the beginning and it was spinning a little too much and starting to wear out. At one point there was a bad cable for the kicker motor, which was just a little too short. It wasn't up to spec. So when I turned and then shifted with the throttle, it actually pulled the throttle cable out of the motor itself, and then I didn't have throttle control, so I had to go get that fixed and get it replaced. But all in all, like I said, I haven't really had too many true issues with the boat itself, so that experience that I had might not be everybody else's experience, which is a good thing if you're thinking about getting one of these boats. Of course, there's been some things that I've learned throughout the process of having this boat. Being my first bigger size boat with way more electronics. For example, I got 2 graphs in here instead of 1 like I used to have. I got 2 live wells instead of 1, which I used to have. And the other big thing is I have electric power steering, and that power steering runs a lot and pulls a lot of draw on the batteries. So it took a long time to dial in, how do we want to hook up the batteries? What kind of batteries do we want to use to make sure that you don't run out of battery during the day? I only had issues with the trolling motor twice this year, actually running out of battery, and typically it was after a 10 or a 12-hour day. It's got a 36-volt system, 3-bank. It's 112-pound thrust. So for that scenario, that went really well. But the way my other batteries are wired, I got 1 cranking battery for the big motor and 1 cranking battery for the kicker, which runs everything else. And the alternator only charges the big motor battery first and then moves on to the kicker if that one's full. So the idea is that nothing else can draw from the big motor. so that you don't get stuck not being able to turn over your big motor and get stranded out on the lake. But the drawback is you might run out of electronics battery throughout the day. So every once in a while I would have that issue where all of a sudden my graphs start to flicker, eventually shut down and the power steering kills. And sometimes I could drive around with the alternator and get a charge back in, but typically that took way too long and I just wound up having to get back to shore. That was one of the biggest difficulties to figure that out. So we went through a couple different types of batteries, but long story short, I think I had not been used to charging those batteries at the end of the day. Now I do. So I'm hoping that for next year, as long as I'm charging them, and we're gonna wait and see, but hopefully next year that setup will still work. If not, I might have to consider something else to try to figure out how I can run everything on 2 batteries, including the big motor and the wiring together, adding another battery. We'll see what happens, but hopefully it won't be too big a deal next year. I also learned a few things about using an Ulterra, for example. The one thing I was pleasantly surprised about was I never did have issues when it was cold. I've heard stories about if it gets below like 35 degrees, it might not deploy and stow. I do think if you were below 32 degrees and you got it wet and tried to stow it, it might freeze up and that could cause a problem. But as long as you don't get in that scenario, it hasn't been an issue. But some of the issues that I have had is occasionally something will happen with it, it'll get an error and it'll malfunction and it won't want to stow and it won't want to deploy. And I got stuck one time where I had to do the manual stow, and once you do the manual stow, there's some things you got to do manually to get it back in orientation so that you can use it again too with the belts and all that kind of stuff. So I wish there was like an override feature where you could do, if the Ulterra wasn't working, it could essentially turn into a Tarova and you can manually deploy it, but it doesn't really work that way, unfortunately. So learning how to do the manual stow, and there's videos for that out there, that's important. And then there's also a manual reset you can do, which you turn the motor off, you turn it back on, you wait 3 seconds and you quick hit the power button 3 times and it'll go trim all the way up and kind of reset and reorient itself. And that's helpful occasionally. Like once I got it stuck, deployed, and I did that reset and it was able to get it out. I don't know what was going on, but that helped get it out of its funk or whatever, and it was able to stow, and then I was able to keep fishing after that. So it's important to know the manual reset. And the other thing is, every once in a while, maybe you accidentally bump it with your hand or it hits a rock or something, but if something manually turns that thing, sometimes it loses orientation with where it's supposed to stow. So instead of stowing properly, it'll start to stow sideways and it'll catch and it won't get into the ramp. If that happens, basically what you have to do is figure out where it should be positioned, get it halfway up and stowed, and then pause it, and then turn the power off. If the power's off and you manually rotate that thing, that it doesn't recognize that rotation and it won't try to correct for it. So you can manually turn it to where it's supposed to be, then turn the power back on, then resume stowing, and it'll go back into the position it was supposed to be. So sometimes you need to do a little manual reset like that. I call the other thing a manual reset. This is a true manual reset of orientation. Point being, if the power's off and you turn it, it won't try to turn it back when you try to reoperate it. It'll consider that to be the new position. So sometimes you have to do that with the power off. So yeah, I guess final thoughts, like what do I overall think of the boat? Would I buy it again? I would say that answer is yes. Again, a lot of the issues that I've had have been, I think, accessory related and COVID related, which isn't necessarily Lund related and may or may not happen again in your instance. The boat itself though is great. It performs well. The boat control is absolutely amazing. It has made life so much easier in that sense. Granted, this is my first fiberglass boat. I was going from an aluminum, but those things considered made it very much a good purchase. Now, price-wise, is it expensive? Yeah, it is not a cheap boat, but at least for me, this is my business. This is my job, this is my career. So it was worth it for me, and I think it is performed up to its value. That said, if you're looking at another fiberglass boat in the market, a Ranger, Skeeter, something like that, and the price is more important to you per what you're getting for that, like that's gonna be your call. But performance-wise for the boat itself, I absolutely love it. It's the best boat I've ever owned, and I would want it again if I were to get a boat in this vein down the road. So that's it. That's the updated review of the Lund Pro V GL 202 after one full season of guiding. And It made my job a lot easier, and hopefully there's been a lot of lessons learned that I'll have in play for next year, so I won't have to go through the learning curve again. There are a lot of things to learn for a bigger, more advanced boat like this, and I think everybody's gonna kind of have to go through that and figure out the best way to set it up for them. But I'm getting more and more comfortable with that process every day, and I think next year should be even better. So hopefully you liked this video. Hopefully it was helpful. Remember to like, subscribe, stay tuned for more content. I'll see you more this winter and definitely next year in the open water season up in Lake Sakakawea. And if you want to go fishing, you know where to find me there too. BluemendaalFishing.com. Book a trip, see you on the water. Later, fisher people.